Chapter 1. The gathering stormed the air in Tirana, hung heavy with the scent of grilled coffee and diesel fumes, a cocktail that defined the city's restless pulse in the summer of 2013. It was mid-July, and the sun dipped low over the Skanderbeg Square, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement where vendors hawked knockoff sunglasses and faded postcards of Arben Hoxha's bunker relics. Albania was a nation clawing its way out of the communist grave, but the scars ran deep, corruption festered like an open wound, and in the underbelly, the mafia didn't just thrive, they dictated the rhythm of life. Arben Hoxha, no relation to the dictator, thank God, wiped the sweat from his brow as he locked the front door of his modest electronics shop on Aruga Adriatic. At 42, Arben was a survivor, one of those quiet men who had bootstrapped his way through the pyramid scheme collapse of '97 and the floods of '11. His store, Elektronika Arben, was a beacon for the neighborhood. Cheap Chinese smartphones, second-hand laptops, and repair services that could resurrect a Nokia from the dead. It wasn't much, but it kept his wife, Liriana, and their 16-year-old daughter, Edda, fed and sheltered in their two-room apartment above the shop. Dreams of expansion whispered in his ear, maybe a second location in Durrës, closer to the port. But dreams required capital, and capital in Tirana meant dealing with shadows you couldn't outrun. He paused on the sidewalk, lighting a Marlboro with trembling fingers. The street was alive with the evening exodus, old men in flat caps shuffling toward Carvajane for raki and backgammon, young couples weaving through on Vespers, their laughter cutting through the honk of Fiat Pandas. But Arben's eyes darted to the alley across the way, where a black Mercedes with tinted windows idled like a predator. It had been there the last 2 nights, engine purring softly, no plates visible in the dim light. Coincidence? In Tirana, coincidence was a luxury for tourists. "Arben, you're late again." Liriana's voice floated down from the balcony, laced with that mix of affection and exasperation that had sustained their 20-year marriage. She leaned over the wrought iron railing, her dark hair tied back, apron dusted with flour from the byrek she'd been rolling. At 38, she still turned heads, but the worry lines around her eyes told the story of too many sleepless nights. "Coming, love," he called back, forcing a smile. He flicked the cigarette away and crossed the narrow street, dodging a pothole filled with murky rainwater. The Mercedes' headlights flickered once as he passed, deliberate, he was sure, and his heart stuttered. Paranoia, he told himself. Just the heat playing tricks. Upstairs, the apartment was a sanctuary of faded warmth. Walls papered in floral patterns from the '80s, a television droning the latest from Top Channel about the EU accession talks, and the aroma of simmering tave kosi wafting from the kitchen. Edda was at the table, hunched over her textbooks, her ponytail swinging as she scribbled notes for her university entrance exams. She was the light of their lives, sharp as a tack, dreaming of studying law in Italy, away from the stuck-in-the-mud life of Tirana. "Dad, you look like you've seen a ghost," she said without looking up, her voice carrying that teenage edge softened by genuine concern. Arben chuckled, hanging his jacket on the hook by the door. "Just the usual ghosts, the ones that don't pay their repair bills." He ruffled her hair, earning a playful swat, and kissed Liriana's cheek as she stirred the pot, but inside, the knot in his stomach tightened. 2 weeks ago, a customer, a slick-talking importer named Bisnik, had approached him about a business opportunity. Smuggled components from Greece, high margins, easy money. Arben had said no, politely but firmly. Bisnik's smile hadn't reached his eyes. Dinner was a ritual, plates of byrek, yogurt, and fresh tomatoes from the market, washed down with homemade raki that burned like liquid fire. They talked of small things, Edda's crush on a boy from school, Liriana's gossip from the hair salon where she worked part-time, Arben's latest tale of a customer who tried to haggle over a cracked iPhone screen. Laughter filled the room, fragile as glass. But as the clock ticked toward 10 p.m., Arben's phone buzzed on the table, a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Tomorrow. Cafe Albania, 2 p.m. Don't make us come find you." His fork froze midway to his mouth. Liriana noticed immediately. "What is it?" "Nothing," he lied, pocketing the phone, just a late payment reminder. That night, sleep evaded him. He lay beside Liriana, listening to the distant wail of a siren, police or ambulance, it was all the same in Tirana, and stared at the ceiling cracks that mapped out like veins. The mafia wasn't some Hollywood invention. They were woven into the fabric here. Everyone knew stories. The gang of Lushan shaking down farmers in the south, the Derez crews controlling the ports with iron fists wrapped in bribes. Extortion was the polite term. It was protection money or else. Shops burned, families threatened, bodies fished from the Ishem River with concrete shoes. And kidnapping, that was the nuclear option reserved for those who thought they could say no. By morning, the city awoke in a haze of heat and exhaust. Arben kissed his family goodbye, Edda off to her summer tutoring, Liriana to the salon, and descended to the shop. The Mercedes was gone, but its absence felt like a taunt. Business trickled in. A grandmother needing her radio fixed, a student haggling for earbuds. By noon, the text gnawed at him like a rat. Cafe Albania was neutral ground, a smoky den on the edge of Biloku, where intellectuals and thugs alike nursed espressos under the watchful eyes of waiters who saw everything. He arrived early, claiming a corner table with a view of the door. The cafe buzzed, a group of university kids debating politics, an old communist griping about the price of bread. At 2:05, the door swung open, and in walked Bisnik, flanked by two men who looked like they bench-pressed Fiats. Bisnik was mid-30s, sharp suit over a paunch, gold chain glinting against his olive skin. His companions were stone, one tall and scarred, the other squat with a neck tattoo peeking from his collar, a coiled serpent, the mark of the Kukes boys, northern hardliners who'd cut their teeth in the '97 anarchy. "Arben, my friend," Bisnik boomed, sliding into the seat opposite. He signaled for coffees, ignoring the tension radiating from Arben like heat from asphalt. The scarred one loomed by the door, eyes scanning. The squat one took the adjacent table, nursing a water like it was poison. "Bisnik," Arben replied, voice steady despite the pulse hammering in his temples, "you could have just called about the parts." Bisnik leaned in, his breath sour with cigarettes. "Ah, but this is more than parts, Arben. This is opportunity, the big leagues." He slid a photo across the table, a warehouse in Durrës, crates stamped with Greek labels. "We bring in the goods, screens, chips, the works, you distribute. We split 60 to 40. You walk away rich enough to send Edda to that fancy school in Rome." Arben's stomach twisted at the mention of his daughter's name. "How did they know? I told you, I'm small time. I fix things, I don't smuggle." The smile faded. Bisnik's eyes hardened, flicking to the scarred enforcer who cracked his knuckles audibly. "Everyone starts small, Arben, but refusing, that's bad for business, bad for family." He paused, letting the words sink in like hooks. "We've heard about your debts, the bank breathing down your neck for that loan. We can make it disappear." Or, he trailed off, pulling out his phone and tapping the screen. A photo loaded. Edda laughing with friends outside her school, time-stamped yesterday. Arben's world narrowed to a pinprick. "You leave her out of this. Join us, and we all win." Bisnik's voice dropped to a whisper, laced with menace. "Say no and things get complicated. Protection isn't free in this city. 10,000 lek a week starting now, for your shop, for your home." Extortion. The word screamed in Arben's mind, but he nodded, numb. "I'll think about it." Bisnik stood, clapping him on the shoulder hard enough to bruise. "Think fast. We don't like waiting." The trio melted into the crowd, leaving Arben with a cooling coffee and a receipt scribbled with an account number for the protection fee. He stumbled back to the shop, the afternoon sun mocking his pallor. Liriana texted, "Everything okay? Edda wants to go to the lake tonight. The lake Likni I Tiranes, where families picnicked under the pines. Normalcy." He wanted to scream, to bundle them up and flee to the mountains, but where? Albania was small, and the mafia's reach was long. Evening fell like a shroud. Arben closed early, claiming a headache, and joined his family for the drive to the lake. The road wound through olive groves, the air cooling as they climbed. Edda chatted about her exams, Liriana hummed an old folk tune, but Arben gripped the wheel white-knuckled, eyes flicking to the rearview for tails. None, or so he thought. They spread a blanket by the water, the lapping ripples a soothing counterpoint to the distant city hum. Edda splashed in the shallows, her laughter echoing, while Liriana unpacked the cooler, olives, cheese, bottles of bure. For a moment, Arben let himself breathe, watching his daughter chase fireflies as dusk deepened. Then, headlights pierced the gloom, not from the road, but sweeping across the tree line. A van, unmarked, crunching gravel as it pulled up 50 meters away. Arben bolted upright. "Liriana, get Edda, now." She froze, following his gaze. What? The van doors slid open, and 4 men spilled out, faces obscured by balaclavas, but the squat one from the cafe was unmistakable, Serpent tattoo curling in the moonlight. They moved with purpose, pistols glinting. "Run!" Arben shoved Liriana toward the car, but it was too late. Edda screamed as rough hands seized her, dragging her kicking toward the van. Liriana lunged, nails raking the nearest attacker's face, but a backhand sent her sprawling, blood blooming on her lip. Arben charged, grabbing a rock from the shore, swinging wildly. "Let her go, take me!" The scarred enforcer sidestepped, pistol-whipping him across the jaw. Stars exploded in Arben's vision. He tasted copper. Through the haze, he saw Edda's terrified eyes, her pleas muffled by a gloved hand. "Papa," the squat one sneered, Albanian thick with a northern accent. "This is just the start, Hoxha. You know what to do." They bundled her into the van, tires spinning dirt as it roared away into the night. Liriana crawled to Arben, sobbing, her hands pressing his bleeding face. "They took her. God, they took our girl." Arben's world shattered. Rage and helplessness warred within him as he fumbled for his phone, dialing the police with shaking fingers. But even as the line connected, he knew. In Tirana, the law was a suggestion, and the mafia wrote the rules. The storm had broken, and Edda was its first casualty. Chapter 2, Whispers in the Dark. The police station in Tirana was a relic from the Hoxha era. Its concrete facade scarred by decades of neglect, and the occasional bullet hole from 97 riots. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry hornets, casting a sickly pallor over the linoleum floors sticky with God knows what. It was 2 a.m., and the air reeked of stale coffee, unwashed bodies, and the faint metallic tang of fear. Arben Hoxha sat on a splintered wooden bench in the waiting area, his jaw throbbing from the pistol whip, a makeshift ice pack, courtesy of Liriana's scarf, and a vending machine soda numbly pressed against it. Beside him, Liriana rocked back and forth, her bloodied lips swollen, eyes red-rimmed from tears that had long since dried into salt tracks on her cheeks. She clutched a crumpled tissue, whispering prayers in the old Tosk dialect her grandmother had taught her, words that begged saints for miracles in a city where saints had long fled. The desk sergeant, a portly man named Fatmir with a mustache like a broom bristle, had taken their statement with the enthusiasm of a man filing taxes. "Kidnapping? At the lake," he'd grunted, scribbling notes on a form yellowed with age. Description of the van, plates, weapons. Arben had rattled off what he could. The unmarked white Fiat Ducato, no plates, 4 men in balaclavas, the squat one's serpent tattoo. But Fatmir's eyes had glazed over midway, flicking to the clock. "We'll look into it, file a report, go home, get some rest." As if rest were possible, as if home weren't a tomb without Edda's laughter echoing through it. Now, hours later, a detective shuffled in, Inspector Gesem, mid-50s, rumpled suit hanging off a frame whittled by chain-smoking and cheap brandy. His face was a map of jowls and stubble, eyes bloodshot from pulling doubles in a force underfunded and overextended. "Hoxha, this way." He led them to a cramped interrogation room, the table scarred with cigarette burns, a single bulb swinging like a noose. Liriana collapsed into a chair, her hands trembling as she accepted a styrofoam cup of watery tea. Arben paced, the linoleum squeaking under his shoes, every nerve ending screaming for action. "Tell me again," Gesem said, lighting a cigarette and exhaling a plume that curled toward the vent like smoke signals. "From the beginning." Arben recounted it all, the Mercedes lurking, Bisnick's proposition at the cafe, the photo of Edda, the extortion demand. Liriana interjected with sobs, describing the attack, the van's growl, the glint of guns, Edda's final scream. Gesem nodded, jotting notes, but his expression was that of a man who'd heard 1,000 variations on the same tale. Bisnik who, last name, connections, Bisnik Kola, imports from Greece. I think he's with the Kukes crew, northern boys, heavy into smuggling. Arben's voice cracked on the last word, Kukes. The gateway to Kosovo, a smuggling nexus since the wars, where clans like the ex-Hakaj or the Keshili ruled with a case and vendettas. Bisnik's tattoo confirmed it. The serpent was their sigil, inked in Pristina prisons. Gezim leaned back, chair groaning. Kukes, that's above my pay grade. He stubbed out the cigarette, lit another. Look, Hoxha, this city's a powder keg. EU talks got everyone twitchy, cops raiding ports, Italians sniffing around for heroin routes. Mafias are squeezing harder, marking territory. Kidnappings like this, their messages, you crossed someone. I said no to their deal, Arben spat, fists clenching, smuggled parts. That's all, nothing's all in Tirana. Gezim's gaze softened fractionally, a flicker of empathy in the cynicism. My niece went missing last year, found her in a Durrez basement, God rest. But these northern wolves, they play rough. We'll put out an alert on the van, check CCTV from the Lake Road. But resources are thin. You got money, ransom's usually the play. Liriana's head snapped up. Ransom, we don't have. Our savings are for Edda's tuition. €5,000 tops, Gezim shrugged. Then pray, or pay the protection they wanted. Sometimes that's the only way out. He slid a card across the table, his direct line scribbled in biro. Call if you hear from them. And Hoxha, don't go vigilante. These boys eat amateurs for breakfast. Dawn crept in like a thief, grey light filtering through barred windows as they stumbled out of the station. The streets were awakening. Bakery carts trundling with trays of simite, the first trams rattling toward the university district. Arben hailed a taxi, a battered Mercedes, ironically, and they rode in silence to the apartment. Liriana stared out the window, her reflection a ghost in the glass, while Arben's mind raced circuits of rage and regret. Why hadn't he taken the deal? Why expose his family? Edda's room waited upstairs, untouched. Posters of Rome's Colosseum curling at the edges, her bed neatly made, a half-read copy of The Godfather on the nightstand, irony's cruel joke. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the ghost of last night's dinner. Liriana sank onto the sofa, pulling a photo album from the shelf, wedding pictures, Edda's baptism, beach days in Sarandeh. She was just a baby, she murmured, tracing a finger over a faded print of toddler Edda in a sundress, gap-toothed smile beaming. Arben paced the kitchen, brewing strong coffee laced with raki, the burn steadying his shakes. His phone, silenced during the ordeal, now blinked with missed calls. Neighbors asking about the commotion, a supplier confirming an order, and one voicemail, time-stamped 3:47 a.m., from a blocked number. He played it on speaker, heart slamming. A voice, distorted, gravelly with a northern burr, filled the room. Hoxha, you got our message. 10,000 lek by noon, wired to the account. That's for the girl. Say no and pieces start arriving. Cans of Byrek with fingers, you know the drill. Click. No demands for the smuggling, just the extortion ramped up. Edda as collateral. Liriana wailed, album tumbling to the floor. My baby, they're monsters. Arben's vision blurred with fury. He grabbed his jacket. I need to get the money. Pawn shop on Aruga Ibrahim Rugova, they take anything. But Liriana clutched his arm, nails digging crescents. No, call Gezim, let the police. Police, he laughed bitterly. They're probably on the take. Half the force is mafia adjacent. We handle this ourselves. The pawn shop was a dim cavern off the main drag, shelves groaning under gold chains, Soviet watches, and heirloom rugs faded to threads. The proprietor, a wiry Greek-Albanian named Kostas with a hook nose and calculating eyes, haggled like a bazaar merchant. Arben offered his wedding ring, plain gold, 20 years of wear, and Liriana's necklace, a filigree piece from her dowry. 8,000 lek total, Kostas grunted, testing the metal with a bite. Markets down. 10, Arben snarled, leaning in, the desperation sharpening his tone. For my daughter, Kostas paused, sympathy flickering before avarice won. 9-5, final. They left with a wad of crumpled bills, the jewelry locked in a case like betrayed lovers. Back home, Arben logged into the bank app on his ancient laptop, fingers flying over keys worn smooth. The transfer burned, every like a piece of their future, Edda's tuition evaporating into the ether of a mafia account traced to a shell company in SH Coder. Confirmation pinged, sent. Noon came and went, the city sweltering under a sun that mocked their vigil. By afternoon, the apartment was a pressure cooker. Liriana chine-smoked Elle and Muzz, pacing between the balcony and the kitchen, frying peppers that no one ate. Arben fielded calls from the shop, customers wondering why he hadn't opened, lying about illness, his mind elsewhere. The landline rang at 3 p.m., shrill as an alarm. Unknown caller. He snatched it up. Hoxha, the same voice, less distorted now, laced with smug satisfaction. Good boy, money's in, girl's fine for now, but we're not done. Tomorrow, noon, Cafe Albania again. Bring a sample, those Greek chips we talked about. Prove you're in or she starves. And Hoxha, no cops, we see blue, she bleeds. The line died. Arben relayed it, voice hollow. Liriana collapsed against him, sobs racking her frame. What do we do? Steal. Beg, smuggle, he whispered, the word poison on his tongue. The shop held a few crates, legit imports, but he could palm a handful, fudge the inventory. Risky, but for Edda. Twilight bled into night, the city lights winking like conspirators. They ate nothing, sleep impossible. Arben sat by the window, nursing Raki, staring at the alley where the Mercedes had lurked. Footsteps echoed below, neighbors heading to the bar, oblivious. Then a new sound, a low rumble, tires on cobblestone. He peered out, the white van parked in shadow, engine idling, a silhouette in the driver's seat, watching, taunting. Liriana joined him, hand on his shoulder. They're here, always here. Arben's resolve hardened, a knife edge. Tomorrow he'd play their game, but in the dark recesses of his mind, plans brewed, not just survival, but payback. The Kukes boys had taken his light. He'd dragged them into the abyss. Across town, in a derelict warehouse on the outskirts near Kames, Edda Hoxha huddled in a corner of a windowless room, wrists bound with zip ties that bit into her skin. The air was fetid, thick with mold and the drip of leaking pipes. A single bare bulb swung overhead, casting jittery shadows on crates stamped with contraband labels, cigarettes from Montenegro, pills from Turkey. Her captors. 4 men rotating shifts, faces hard as the concrete floor. The squat one with the tattoo, Lewin, they'd called him, tossed her a water bottle and a stale Peter, his grin yellowed teeth in the gloom. Eat, princess, papa's paying up. His Albanian was guttural, laced with threats veiled as jokes. Smart man, unlike some. Edda shrank back, knees to chest, her school uniform torn at the hem from the struggle. At 16, she was no stranger to Tirana's grit, pickpockets on the bus, whispers of girls vanishing into trafficking rings, but this was nightmare fuel, the kind her father shielded her from with tall tailies and locked doors. She thought of her law books, dreams of justice in marble halls. Now justice was a zip tie and a bully's leer. The tall scarred one, Dritton, paced outside the door, muttering into a phone. Yeah, boss, money's in, he's hooked. A pause. The girl, feisty, broke a nail on me. Laughter, coarse and echoing. Edda's mind word, cataloguing details. Lewin's limp from an old wound, Dritton's missing pinky, knife fight. The other 2, nameless grunts, chine-smoked and played cards, arguing over a missed penalty in last night's partisani match. Escape. The door was steel, padlocked. A small vent high up whispered freedom, but at 54 she couldn't reach. Yell, they'd gag her worse. Instead she waited, heart a drumbeat, whispering her own prayers. Papa, come get me. Hours blurred into a haze of fear and fatigue. Then footsteps, new ones, heavier. The door creaked open, and in stepped Bisnick, suit impeccable despite the hour, a bottle of cognac dangling from one hand. Little Hoxha, he purred, crouching to her level, cologne clashing with the rot. Your father's learning. Soon you'll be home. But tell me, does he talk in his sleep? Secrets we should know? His fingers brushed her cheek, probing, and she jerked away, spitting defiance. Go to hell, Bisnick chuckled, rising. Feisty like her mother, good, keeps things interesting. He nodded to Lewin. Feed her proper, we need her intact. As he left, the door slamming, Edda curled tighter, tears hot on her face. Intact. The word chilled her. This wasn't just money, it was ownership. a thread pulling her family into the web. Outside, the van's engine coughed to life, headlights cutting the dark as it ferried Bisnik back to his villa in the hills, where marble floors and imported whiskey masked the blood on his hands. The game was afoot, and Arben Hoxha was the pawn. But pawns could promote, and in Albania's chessboard of crime, that meant queens or checkmate. Chapter 3, Threads of Deceit. The noon sun scorched Tirana like a branding iron, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirage that distorted the facades of crumbling Ottoman houses and Soviet-era blocks. Aruga Skenderbeg pulsed with midday chaos. Vendors shouting over the din of donkey carts and belching buses, the air thick with the sizzle of street-side gjele and the acrid bite of exhaust from overloaded larders. Arben Hoxha navigated the throng with a cardboard box tucked under one arm. Its contents, a dozen high-end microchips pilfered from a legitimate shipment in his shop's backroom, clinking softly like guilty secrets. His other hand gripped a battered Nokia, screen cracked from yesterday's fall, thumb hovering over Gezim's number. Call the cops, report the new demand. The thought twisted in his gut like a knife, but betrayal meant Edda's blood on his hands. No, he'd play the game, buy time, find a way to turn the board. Sweat beaded on his forehead, not just from the heat, but from the eyes he felt boring into his back. Paranoia had bloomed overnight into full paranoia, every shadow a Kukes enforcer, every passerby a spotter. The white van's silhouette from last night lingered in his mind's eye, idling like a promise of worse to come. Liriana had begged him to stay home, her voice raw from crying, but he'd kissed her fiercely, murmuring assurances he didn't believe. "I'll get her back, I swear on my life." Now, as Café Albania loomed ahead, its faded green awning sagging like weary eyelids, those words felt like a eulogy. Inside, the cafe was a fug of cigarette smoke and strong espresso, the clink of worry beads punctuating conversations in low Albanian murmurs. Intellectuals in linen shirts debated the latest Rama government's anti-corruption facade, while a table of off-duty cops nursed macchiatos, their holsters peeking from jackets. Arben spotted Bisnik immediately, holding court in the same corner booth, flanked by the scarred Dritan and a new face. A wiry youth with a fresh buzzcut and eyes like chipped flint, probably a runner fresh from the Kosovo border runs. Bisnik's suit was crisp silk today, a gold Rolex catching the light as he gestured animatedly, laughing at some private joke. "Arben, right on time. Sit, sit." Bisnik's welcome was all teeth, sliding a menu across the scarred formica table as if this were a social call. Dritan loomed, arms crossed, his missing pinky a stark white stub against tanned skin. The kid eyed the box with predatory interest. Arben lowered the package carefully, heart hammering. The sample. As requested, he pushed it forward, watching Bisnik's manicured fingers pry open the flaps. The chips gleamed under the low light, Intel Core i7 processors, worth a small fortune on the black market, sourced from a Greek supplier who'd never suspect the shortfall. Bisnik whistled low, extracting one and holding it to the light like a jeweler appraising a diamond. "Beautiful. Grade A, you'll do nicely in distribution, Hoxha. We run these through Durres, customs is greased, Italians waiting on the other side. Your cut starts at 20%, scales up." He snapped the box shut, signaling the waiter for Raki shots, fiery and unsolicited. "To new beginnings." Arben forced a nod, throat dry as he downed the shot, the burn chasing away the bile. "And Edda, when do I get her back?" Bisnik's smile thinned, eyes flicking to Dritan, who cracked his knuckles with deliberate slowness. "Patience, friend, she's comfortable, safe, but trust is earned." He leaned in, voice dropping to a conspiratorial hiss. "One more task, tonight, warehouse on the edge of Kames, old textile mill, you know it, bring a van. Load it with phones, 50 units unlocked from your stock. We fence them in Kosovo, you get a taste. Do this and tomorrow your girl's home, Scout's honor." Kames, Arben's blood ran cold. The suburb was a no-man's land of rusting factories and refugee shanties, a hub for the Kukes pipeline, heroin mules, gun runners, girls trafficked north. The textile mill, abandoned since the 90s, its chimneys skeletal against the sky, whispered horrors in local lore. Bodies dumped in the adjacent creek, screams echoing from hidden basements. Why me? I'm no driver. Because you're invested now, Bisnick purred, sliding a folded map across the table, hand-drawn, marked with a red X. And because we say so, midnight, come alone, no tales, no tricks. The kid snatched the box, vanishing into the crowd like smoke, while Dritten lingered, his stare a physical weight. Arben left the cafe in a daze, the raki sloshing in his stomach, the map burning a hole in his pocket. The streets blurred as he walked, mind fracturing into shards, Edda's face, Liriana's pleas, the cold calculus of compliance. He needed help, someone outside the web, someone with pull. An old contact from the 97 chaos. Sokol, a former army buddy turned scrap dealer in the new bazaar. Sokol had lost a brother to the gangs back then. He owed Arben a favor or two. The bazaar was a labyrinth of stalls under corrugated tin roofs, hawkers peddling everything from knockoff Adidas to live chickens that squawked in wicker cages. The air hummed with haggling in a babel of dialects, Geg from the north, Tosk from the south, mingled with the tang of spices and offal from the butcher rows. Arben found Sokol in his yard behind a mountain of twisted rebar and car hulks, the man himself, a bear of a figure, grease-streaked overalls, straining over a belly earned from too many post-shift beers. Arben Hoxha. As I live and breathe. Sokol boomed, wiping ham-sized hands on a rag, pulling him into a backslapping hug that smelled of motor oil and rakia. At 45, Sokol was weathered but solid, his face a lattice of scars from a bar fight in 98, eyes sharp as ever. What brings you to my kingdom? Need a part for that old Skoda? Arben glanced over his shoulder, voice low. Trouble, Sokol, big trouble, the Kukez boys, they took Edda. My girl, extortion, kidnapping, I need information. A way in, Sokol's joviality evaporated like mist, his grip tightening on Arben's shoulder until it bruised. Kukez, Jesus man, those bastards ate my brother alive, dismembered him for a debt. He steered Arben into the shadowed office, a prefab shack cluttered with ledgers and a half-empty bottle of scrappery. Door shut, he poured 2 glasses, the amber liquid glinting ominously. Tell me everything. Arben spilled it, the proposition, the lake ambush, the payments, now the warehouse run. Sokol listened, face darkening with each detail, fingers drumming the desk like Morse code for murder. Kamez Mill, that's Lewin's lair, the squat fucker with the snake ink. Yeah, I know it, guarded like Fort Knox. Tripwires, dogs, lookouts on the roof. But there's a blind spot, sewer grate under the east wall, leads to the creek. I used it once, smuggling cigs the other way. Hope flickered, fragile as a candle. You'd help. Go with me, Sokol barked, a laugh bitter and short. Help, I'd burn the place down for you, but smart, we scout first. Tonight, before midnight. I got a boy, young and quick, can slip in, plant a tracker or cut a wire. You do the run, draw 'em out, then we hit back hard. Arben's pulse quickened, the weight lifting fractionally. Allies, a plan, however threadbare. Liriana. She can't know, it'll kill her. Women are tougher than you think, Sokol grunted but nodded. Meet at my gate 10 p.m. Bring bolt cutters, gloves, and pray, brother. Pray hard. Back at the apartment, the air was thicker than the afternoon heat, laced with Liriana's unspoken terror. She moved like a ghost through the kitchen, chopping onions for a supper neither would eat, her knife flashing with mechanical precision. Edda's room door stood ajar, a shrine of absence, the bedspread rumpled from her last morning, a forgotten hairbrush on the dresser shedding dark strands like tears. I met him, Arben said softly, dropping the map on the table. She froze, knife hovering, the samples in play, one more job, phones to Kamez, then she's home. Liriana's eyes welled, the knife clattering to the board. Kamez, Arben, that's death row. Gezim warned, those places are slaughterhouses. She crossed to him, hands framing his face, searching for lies. Swear it's the end. I swear. The lie tasted like ash, but her nod was desperate belief. They ate in silence, lamb stew cooling untouched, while Arben sketched the plan in his head. Deliver the load, signal Sokol's boy, extract Edda in the chaos. Simple, suicidal, but for her, anything. Dusk painted the city in bruised purples as Arben prepped the van, a nondescript VW transporter borrowed from a neighbor on a fabricated errand. He loaded the crates in the dying light, 50 Nokia Lumias stacked like dominoes, their screens dark mirrors reflecting his haggard face. Liriana watched from the balcony, arms wrapped tight, mouthing "be safe." As he drove off at 9:45, the engines rumble a dirge. Sokol waited at the bazaar gate, a ghost in black hoodie and jeans, a duffel of tools at his feet. His boy, actually a lanky 19-year-old named Binny, with a face like a ferret and nerves of steel, hunched beside him, fiddling with a GPS tracker the size of a matchbox. "Boss says we own the night," Binny quipped, voice cracking slightly, but his eyes were steady. The drive to Kames was a descent into urban decay, tidy Tirana giving way to potholed roads, flanked by skeletal billboards and gypsy camps flickering with bonfire light. The mill loomed on the horizon, a hulking silhouette against the starless sky, its windows shattered, eyes staring blind. They parked a quarter-mile out in a thicket of brambles and proceeded on foot, shadows among shadows. Sokol led, squat and sure-footed, Binny scampering ahead like a scout. Arben brought up the rear, bolt cutters heavy in his pack, sweat slicking his palms despite the chill. The air grew fetid near the creek, stagnant water and rot, and there it was. The great rusted iron bars half submerged, weeds choking the gaps. Binny dropped to his knees, prying with a crowbar, muscles straining until it gave with a screech that echoed too loud. "Easy, kid," Sokol hissed, scanning the tree line. No lights, no dogs barking. Luck or a trap. Binny slithered in like an eel, the tracker clutched in his teeth, vanishing into the dark tunnel. Minutes stretched like taffy, 5, 10, Arben's watch ticking accusations. Then a faint splash, and Binny's head re-emerged, grinning mud-smeared triumph. Planted, on a crate inside near the door, they'll never know. Relief washed over Arben, mingled with dread. The scout done, they retreated, Sokol clapping Binny's back. "Good work. Now Hoxha, your turn, midnight's close." Arben nodded, throat tight, and peeled off toward the mill's main gate. The van's headlights cut the gloom as he approached, gravel crunching under tires. The gate was chain link, topped with razor wire, a single floodlight bathing the entrance in harsh yellow. 2 guards materialized from the guardhouse, AK slung casual, cigarettes glowing like fireflies, one with a face pocked by acne scars, the other bald and barrel-chested. "Business?" The pockmarked one barked, rifle barrel rising lazy. "Delivery for Lewin, phones from Hoxha." Arben killed the engine, hands visible, heart a war drum. They conferred in gutturals, then waved him through, the gate rasping open on unoiled hinges. Inside the yard, the mill squatted like a beast, loading docks yawning black. Lewin waited there, squat frame silhouetted, Serpent tattoo writhing in the light as he stubbed out a smoke. Dritten flanked him, pistol holstered but thumb on the grip. Right on time, Hoxha parked by the dock. Lewin's grin was a slash, eyes raking the van. Arben complied, killing the lights, the sudden dark pressing like a hand. Crates unloaded under Lewin's watchful eye, 50 phones inventoried with greedy fingers, while Dritten prowled the perimeter, radio crackling static. "All good," Lewin grunted finally, slapping the van's hood. "Boss is pleased." "Girl's yours tomorrow, dawn pickup, same lake, don't fuck it." Arben nodded, mute, reverse lights flaring as he backed out. The gate clanged shut behind him, a finality that chilled. He'd done it, the drop clean, no hitches. Sokol and Binny would melt away unseen, but as he merged onto the road, phone buzzing in his pocket, elation curdled to ice. "Unknown number, nice work, but we see everything. Your scout, cute. Next time we skin him." A photo attached. Binny frozen mid-crawl in the sewer, time-stamped minutes ago. They knew, the trap sprung. Arben floored the accelerator, tires screaming, the mill shrinking in the mirror. Deceit had threads, and they were tightening around his neck. Meanwhile, in the mill's bowels, Edda strained against her bonds, the zip ties cutting fresh welts. The room had filled with new crates, the ones from her father's van, stacked haphazardly, the tracker blinking faint red in the gloom, unnoticed. Lewin burst in, face thunderous, barking orders at Dritten. The Jew Sokol's rat, Bisnik wants him gone, and the girl, leverage, double the guards. Edda's heart leaped, Papa's doing, hope razor-thin, pierced the despair. But as chains rattled outside, new shadows lengthening, she realized. The web was vast, and escape was a dream woven in lies. Chapter 4. Fractured alliances. The pre-dawn air in Tirana carried a chill that seeped into the bones, a harbinger of the autumn rains that would soon lash the city into submission. It was 4:30 a.m., and the streets of the capital lay hushed under a pall of fog rolling in from the Adriatic, muffling the distant call to prayer from the Etham Bay Mosque. Arben Hoxha gripped the steering wheel of the borrowed VW transporter, knuckles white as bleached bone, the engine's low growl the only sound piercing the silence. His eyes, bloodshot from a night of fitful dozes haunted by Benny's mud-smeared face in that damning photo, scanned the rearview mirror obsessively. No tails, yet. The Qk's crew's message had been a gut punch. They knew about the scout, the tracker, Sokol's involvement. The game had tilted from extortion to extermination, and Arben was the bullseye. He'd barely slept after fleeing the mill, pulling over on a deserted stretch of the Elbasan road to vomit raki and regret into the gravel. The phone photo burned in his memory, Benny oblivious in the sewer, time-stamped 11:47 p.m., a sniper's scope away from death. Arben had called Sokol immediately, voice a rasp. They saw him, the kid. We are burned. Sokol's response had been a guttural curse in Geg dialect, followed by barked orders. Get to the safe house. Old mill in Farke, my cousin's place. Dawn pick up at the lake like they said, but we move first. Arm up, arm up. As if Arben, the electronics tinkerer, knew one end of a pistol from the other. But desperation was the great equalizer. He'd stopped at Sokol's yard en route, pocketing a snub-nosed Makarov from a lockbox, its weight like lead in his jacket. Now circling Likny I Tiranes for the third time, the lake's surface gleamed like polished obsidian under the first blush of sunrise. Families wouldn't stir for hours, picnickers with thermoses of boza, kids with kites. But the spot where Edda had been snatched was etched in Arben's mind. The willow trees' drooping branches, the blanket stain from spilled bure, Liriana's blood speckling the grass. He parked 50 meters back, engine off, the van a shadow among the pines. Sokol's plan was razor-thin. Wait for the exchange, grab Edda in the handover chaos, bolt before reinforcements. But with the tracker exposed, it smelled of suicide. Arben chambered a round in the Makarov, click echoing like judgment, tucking it into his waistband. For her, always for her. Headlights pierced the fog at 5:15, a black SUV materializing like a specter, tires crunching gravel with predatory slowness. Arben's heart seized, not the white van, but worse, Bisnick's ride, plates muddied for anonymity. Doors opened, and out stepped Lewin the squat, Serpent tattoo coiling as he stretched, Dritten the scarred looming beside him like a monolith. No Edda. Instead, a hooded figure was shoved from the back, slight build, zip-tied hands, stumbling forward with a muffled cry that tore Arben's soul. Edda, he bellowed, bursting from the van, Makarov drawn, the safety off in a blur of panic. Hold it, Hoxha! Lewin snarled, pistol whipping up, a beretta gleaming. Dritten mirrored, his scarred lip curling in a sneer, while the SUV's driver, a fresh-faced thug with a AK slung, trained irons on the girl. One step and she eats lead, drop it. Arben froze, 10 paces away, the gun trembling in his grip. Edda's hood slipped, revealing tear-streaked cheeks, her eyes wide with terror and confusion. Papa, what's? Quiet, bitch, Dritten growled, yanking her hair, eliciting a whimper that flayed Arben raw. The air crackled with tension, fog swirling like smoke from a fuse. Lewin advanced, kicking the Makarov from Arben's hand with a boot that connected like a hammer. It skittered into the underbrush, useless. You think we're idiots. The Jew's boy in the sewer, Sokol's stink all over it. Boss says no more games, you work or she works for us. Arben's mind reeled, rage boiling to a froth. Where's Bisnick? This was the deal. Deal's dead, Lewin spat, holstering his piece with false casualness, signaling Dritten to bind Arben's wrists with rough twine. You're in deeper now. Big load tonight, coke from the port, mules waiting in SH Codair. You drive the decoy van, draw heat if cops sniff. Do it clean, maybe she breathes free. Fuck up. He trailed off, drawing a hunting knife from his belt, its blade catching the dawn light like a promise. He pressed it to Edda's throat, a thin red line blooming. She gasped, body rigid. You bastards, Arben hissed, straining against the bonds, tasting blood where his lips split. Visions flashed. Liriana's face at dawn, her whispered, "Bring her home," the empty apartment waiting like a crypt. "Take me instead, let her go." Lewin chuckled, low and wet, sheathing the knife. "Family man, touching." "Load up." They marched him to the SUV at gunpoint, Edda bundled in beside him, her bound hands clutching his sleeve in silent plea. The drive back to Kames was a blur of hairpin turns and barked Albanian curses, the lake receding like a lost dream. Dritton drove, radio crackling with updates. Package secured. Hoxha's hooked. Sokol next. Arben's blood-iced Sokol. The alliance fractured before it formed. The mill in Kames hadn't changed in the hours since the drop. If anything, it loomed more menacing in the grey light, its rusted silos like fingers clawing the sky. Guards patrolled the perimeter now, 6, maybe 7, AKs at the ready, dogs straining leashes with guttural snarls. Inside the yard, crates from the night's delivery were being forklifted into a larger truck, the air thick with the chemical tang of plastic-wrapped bundles. Cocaine, Arben's stomach churned. This wasn't chips or phones, this was the vein of the beast, the trade that flooded Europe and drowned families in addiction. Bisnik waited in the office, a prefab trailer jury-rigged with fluorescent buzz and a desk piled with ledgers stained by coffee rings. He lounged in a swivel chair, feet up, sipping espresso from a chipped mug, his silk tie loosened like a noose untied. "Arben, my reluctant partner, sit." A chair was shoved forward, and Arben complied, Edda forced into another beside him, her hood removed but eyes downcast, shivering in her torn uniform. "You knew," Arben accused, voice a gravel whisper. "The scout all along." Bisnik's laugh was a bark, setting the mug down with a clink. "Knew, we own the shadows, Hoxha, cameras in the creek, moles in the bazaar. Sokol's been on our list since '97. His brother's head was a message, remember, you dancing with him, amateur hour." He steepled fingers, gold rings glinting, but useful bait. "He'll come crashing in like a bull and we clip his horns. You're the key now. Drive the DK, tonight 10 p.m. route via Kruger. Cops are twitchy post-EU audits. Your van's clean plates looks legit. Deliver to the drop in the hills and maybe your girl's tuition fund gets a bonus." Edda lifted her head, voice small but steel-edged. "You're scum, all of you. Papa, don't." Dritton backhanded her, the slap echoing like a gunshot, her lips splitting anew. Arben lunged, chair toppling, but Lewin pinned him, knee in his back. "Feisty bloodline," Bisnik mused, unfazed. "Reminds me of my sister before the Italians broke her." "Now details." He slid a dossier across, maps, times, fake manifests for electronics export. The DK load, dummy crates of defunct TVs, but flanked by the real mule truck. One wrong turn, and Arben was the fall guy. Hours blurred in the trailer, interrogations laced with threats, Edda bound to a radiator, her sobs muffled by a gag. Lewin grilled Arben on Sokol's network, safe houses, contacts, the works. "Spill or we start carving." Arben stonewalled, enduring punches that bloomed bruises across his ribs, but cracks formed. A name slipped, Farke, the safe house. Bisnik's eyes lit. Perfect. Bait set. By noon, the mill thrummed with activity, loaders cursing in Macedonian, a cookout of coughed sizzling outside, the dogs fed scraps of mystery meat. Edda was shuttled to a side room, for safe keeping, Lewin leering as he locked the door. Arben, wrists chafed raw, was put to work inventorying the coke bricks, each kilo a ghost of lives ruined, the powder's bitter dust coating his nostrils. Despair gnawed, but so did resolve. The tracker, Binny had planted it on a crate near the door. If Sokol came, chaos could cover a snatch. Dusk fell like a guillotine, the sky bruising purple over the Black Mountains. Sokol's assault came at 8 p.m. sharp, a diversionary blast at the east fence, fireworks mislabeled as dynamite, rattling the yard like thunder. Shouts erupted, intruders. "Arm up," guards scrambled, AKs chattering into the night, dogs baying frenzy. In the chaos, Arben slipped his bonds, twine weakened by sweat, grabbing a loose crate lid as a shield, bolting for the side room. Gunfire stitched the air, bullets pinging off silos. Sokol's voice boomed over the din, "Hoxha, for the girl." Shadows darted his crew, three shadows with shotguns laying suppressing fire. Arben shouldered the door, wood splintering, finding Edda curled fetal, gag askew. "Papa!" She scrambled up, bonds cut with a shard of glass from the window. He scooped her, light as a bird, and they ran, zigzagging through the yard, crates exploding under stray rounds. Lewin spotted them, roaring, pistol barking. A bullet grazed Arben's thigh, fire lancing, but he pushed on, Edda's hand vice in his. "The creek, sewer," Sokol's plan B, whispered in the call. They dove for cover behind a forklift, the machine shuddering as slugs hammered it. Dritten charged, scarred face demonic in the floodlights, but Sokol met him, massive frame colliding, fists flying in a brutal ballet. A shotgun blast from Benny's direction felled a guard, the kid emerging ghost pale but fierce. Bisnik fled to the SUV, tires spinning mud as he peeled out, abandoning his men. Lewin broke free, knife drawn, lunging at Arben's back. Arben spun, crate lid swinging like a bat, connecting with a crack that shattered bone. Lewin crumpled, howling, the serpent tattoo awash in blood. "Go, go," Sokol bellowed, wrestling Dritten into submission with a chokehold that popped vertebrae. Arben and Edda hit the creek, fog swallowing them, the sewer greater black maw. He boosted her in first, "Crawl, baby, don't look back," her sobs echoing in the pipe. Gunfire faded, sirens wailed distant, police, finally, drawn by the blasts. Arben followed, thigh screaming, emerging in the brambles where Sokol's getaway truck idled, Benny at the wheel, eyes wild. They piled in, tires screeching onto the road, cames shrinking in the dust. Edda clung to Arben, face buried in his chest, her body racked with shivers. "Is it over?" "Not yet," he murmured, kissing her hair, the Makarov lost but victory bittersweet. Sokol slumped in the back, a graze on his arm seeping red. Bisnik ran, but he'll slither back. "We go underground, my cousin in Vlore, regroup." The truck barreled toward Tirana, dawn breaking gold over the hills, alliances fractured but not broken. Arben's family was whole for now, but the mafia's web lingered, threads snapping but reforming. Vengeance simmered, a promise in the blood on his hands. Across the city, Liriana paced the apartment, phone clutched like a talisman, the empty room a void. A knock, neighbors with rumors of gunfire in cames. Her heart leaped, prayers spilling in Tosk whispers. Then, the door burst open, Arben staggering in with Edda, both battered but breathing. She enveloped them, tears a torrent, the world writing on its axis. But in the quiet aftermath, as Edda slept under blankets, Arben met Liriana's eyes. "It's not done, we fight," she nodded, fire kindling. In Albania's underbelly, survival was alliance, and theirs was forged in fire. Chapter 5, Blood and Reckoning. The road to Vlore unspooled like a vein through Albania's rugged heart. A serpentine ribbon of cracked asphalt flanked by olive groves, silvered by the rising sun and the jagged teeth of the Kerry Hills. It was mid-morning on that sweltering July day in 2013, the air shimmering with heat haze that distorted the horizon into a watery mirage. Arben Hoxha slumped in the passenger seat of Sokol's battered Zastava pickup, his thigh wound throbbing in rhythm with the engine's rattle, a makeshift bandage torn from Benny's shirt, stanching the blood, but doing little for the fire lancing up his leg. Edda curled against him, her head on his shoulder, breath shallow and ragged from exhaustion, her fingers interlaced with his in a grip that spoke of nightmares not yet faded. The girl's uniform was a ruin. Dirt-streaked, bloodied at the collar from Lewin's grip, but her eyes, when they fluttered open, held a spark, defiance forged in the mill's crucible. Sokol drove with one meaty hand on the wheel, the other clamped around a cigarette that dangled precariously from his lips, ash flaking onto his grease-blackened shirt. His arm graze was bound with duct tape and a strip of rag, the wound superficial but a reminder of the cost. Benny, in the back with a shotgun across his lap, stared out at the passing landscape, abandoned farmhouses with roofs caved like broken promises, shepherds herding goats along dusty tracks, his ferret face pale, the adrenaline crash etching lines around his young eyes. "We got her out," he muttered, more to himself than the others. "Fuckers won't know what hit 'em." Arben nodded faintly, his mind a whirlwind of fractured images, the crack of the crate lid against Lewin's skull, Dritten's choked gasp under Sokol's hold, the siren's wail heralding the cops' belated arrival. The mill raid had been a maelstrom, fireworks exploding in false thunder, bullets whizzing like vengeful hornets, the acrid bite of cordite mingling with the creek's rot. They'd left bodies in the yard. 2 guards down, Lewin writhing with a shattered arm, Dritten zip-tied and gagged for the police. Bisnick's SUV had vanished into the dawn, tires screaming a coward's retreat, but not before Arben glimpsed his face in the rear view, pale, twisted with fury, mouthing a promise of retribution. Radio chatter says the blues rolled in heavy, Sokol grunted, flicking the cigarette butt out the window, where it sparked briefly on the tarmac before dying. Kamez is a circus, cops hauling ass, feds sniffing for the coke. Bisnick's boys are scattering like roaches, but he'll regroup, Kukes don't forget. Arben's jaw tightened, the metallic tang of dried blood on his lip a bitter reminder. He took everything, our savings, the shop's future, nearly took her. He squeezed Edda's hand, her warmth a lifeline in the storm. Vilore was a bolt hole, Sokol's cousin a fisherman with a weathered trawler, and a code of silence etched by years of smuggling olive oil and worse across the strait to Italy. There they'd hole up, tend wounds, plan the next move. But peace was a luxury. The mafia's tendrils stretched long, from Tirana's alleys to the coast's salt-crusted docks. The city of Vilore unfolded like a faded postcard. Whitewashed Ottoman villas climbing the hillsides, the turquoise sweep of the bay glittering under the sun, ferries chugging toward Brindisi with loads of emigrants chasing EU dreams. Sokol's cousin, a leathery man named Kamil with a salt and pepper beard and eyes like chipped sea glass, met them at a nondescript dockside warehouse reeking of fish guts and diesel. Family first, Kamil rumbled in thick Liberia dialect, clapping Sokol on the back before ushering them inside. The space was a cavern of nets and boys, a cot in the corner for Edda, a table laden with bread, feta, and bottles of local raki that burned like absolution. Edda collapsed onto the cot, sleep claiming her instantly, her snores a fragile symphony against the lap of waves outside. Liriana, Arben had called her from a borrowed burner, voice cracking with relief, would drive down by noon, her salon shift abandoned, the apartment locked tight. "We are safe," he'd lied, the words a shield. Now, as Kamil stitched Sokol's arm with fisherman's thread and a needle sterilized over Bunsen flame, Arben paced the concrete floor, the Makarov's absence a hollow at his waist. No gun but resolve, Bisnick had to pay, not just for Edda, but for the fracture in his soul, the fear that would haunt his daughter's dreams. Sokol winced as the needle pierced flesh, sweat beading on his brow. Word on the street, my ears in Durres, Bisnick's holed up in a villa outside Sarandeh. Panic move, thinking the south softer, but he's calling in favors, ex-Hackaj remnants, old war debts. Plans hit us, the cops who raided, anyone who breathed wrong. Binny, nursing a black eye from a ricochet bruise, leaned against a crate, shotgun propped like a crutch. We hit first. I know a guy in the port, smuggles guns from Montenegro, a case, grenades, cheap. Arben halted, the warehouse's shadows lengthening as noon approached. Guns, grenades. He was a shopkeeper, not a soldier, but the mill had changed him. The weight of Edda's terror, Liriana's unspoken blame, ignited something primal. No, smart. We used their game against them. The tracker, Binny's plant on that crate of phones, now likely en route with Bisnick's fleeing convoy. If the signal held, Sokol's jury-rigged GPS in the truck's dash could ping it. Follow the load, ambush on the road, make it look like a rival crew, Lushange boys say. Cops chase ghosts, we vanish. Sokol's grin was wolfish, pain forgotten, poetic, blood debt paid in their coin. Kamil grunted approval, pouring raki into tin cups, the liquid gold in the slanting light. They toasted silently, to Edda, to survival, to the reckoning brewing like thunder over the Ionian. Liriana arrived as the sun peaked, her Fiat Panda rattling into the lot like a beetle on its last legs. She burst from the car, hair disheveled, eyes wild with a mother's fury and relief, enveloping Edda in a crushing hug that drew a sob from the girl. "My heart," Liriana whispered, stroking her daughter's matted hair, tears carving tracks through the dust on her cheeks. Arben watched from the doorway, chest tight, the family's reunion a balm on raw nerves. But as Liriana's gaze met his, questioning, fierce, He saw the steel there, the unspoken vow, no more running. Over a meal of grilled sardines and crusty buke, scraped from Camel's pantry, they plotted in hushed tones. Edda, bandaged and bathed in a tin tub, picked at her food, her voice a thread when she spoke. "That man, Bisnik, he touched my face like I was property." The words hung heavy, the warehouse air thickening. Liriana's fork clattered, her hand flying to her mouth, but Arben reached across, covering Edda's small fist. "He'll never touch you again. We end this." Afternoon bled into evening, the bay a canvas of molten orange as the GPS pinged, faint but insistent, the tracker alive in a convoy snaking south towards Sarandeh. Bisnik's villa. A sprawling compound on a cliffside, guarded by walls topped with glass shards, patrols with Dobermans that bayed at shadows. Intelligence from Sokol's network painted it vivid. Armed sentries at the gates, a panic room in the basement stocked with cognac and a case, Bisnik's mistress, a fiery Velora girl named Anila, kept like a trophy, ignorant or complicit. Night fell like a shroud, stars pricking the velvet sky as they rolled out in Camel's trawler first, hugging the coast to evade patrols. The sea was a black mirror, slapping against the hull with whispers of storms past. Arben stood at the prow, wind whipping his shirt, the salt sting in his wounds a penance. Edda and Liriana stayed ashore, Camel's wife watching over, rifles close, but their absence was a void, fueling the fire. Sokol helmed, Benny co-pilot with charts, a duffel of pilfered arms, pistols, a sawed-off shotgun, flashbangs scavenged from the mill. They beached near Butrint, the ancient ruins silent witnesses under the moon, and trekked inland, 3 men against a fortress, shadows in the scrub. The convoy's trace led to a service road below the villa, trucks idling with sentries smoking under floodlights. Arben's heart hammered as they crept closer, bellies to earth, the trackers signal a beacon in Benny's handheld. "Crates in the lead truck," the kid whispered, voice taut. Bisnik's inside, pacing like a caged lion. The ambush unfolded in breaths, Sokol's flashbang arcing over the wall, bursting in white-hot fury that blinded the guards, their shouts dissolving into chaos. Gunfire erupted, sporadic, panicked, as Benny picked off a sentry with a suppressed Beretta, the body slumping silent. Arben vaulted the wall, legs screaming, Makarov reclaimed from the duffel barking twice, one guard down, clutching his knee. Another fleeing into the olive trees, radio squawking betrayal. Inside, the villa was a labyrinth of marble and excess, Persian rugs muffling their steps, walls hung with icons looted from Kosovo churches, the air heavy with incense and fierce sweat. Alarms wailed distant, but the panic room's hum betrayed Bisnik, steel door ajar in haste. Sokol kicked it wide, shotgun leveled, as Arben surged past, eyes locking on the man cowering behind an oak desk, face slick with terror, gold chain tangled in his collar. "Hoxha," Bisnik gasped, hands up, voice a whine stripped of menace. "We can talk money shares, the girl's forgotten." Arben's pistol pressed to his forehead, the barrel cold against fevered skin. "Forgotten. You stole her light." Visions cascaded, Edda's scream at the lake, Liriana's bloodied lip, the zip ties biting her wrists. Sokol and Benny flanked, weapons trained on the 2 guards bursting from a side door, disarmed with brutal efficiency, zip-tied to chairs. Anila huddled in a corner, silk robe clutched, eyes wide but silent, her loyalty cracking like porcelain. "Please," Bisnik begged, urine staining his trousers, the importer's polish peeled to raw desperation. Kuke's code, blood for blood, but mercy, mercy. Arben's laugh was hollow, finger tightening on the trigger. The room spun, the shop's hum before the nightmare, Edda's laughter over textbooks, dreams of Rome shattered. "You wrote the code. Now read it." The shot was thunder, Bisnik's head snapping back, a crimson bloom on the wall like abstract art. Silence crashed in, broken only by Anila's sob, the guard's muffled pleas. Sokol clapped Arben's shoulder, grim respect in his eyes. "Debt paid, let's ghost." They torched the villa, gasoline from the garage, flames licking up the curtains, a pyre for the empire. Alarms screamed as they fled, melting into the night, the tracker's signal silenced with a hammer blow to the device. Dawn found them back in Velora, the trawler slicing homeward, the sea a confessor swallowing secrets. Liriana waited on the dock, Edda in her arms, the family whole under the gull's cries. No words at first, just embraces, salt mingling with tears. But as the sun crested, Arben whispered to Sokol, "The shop. We rebuild," Sokol nodded, bear hug enveloping. "And the Kukes, they'll hunt ghosts." Benny grinned, shotgun slung, a man forged young. Weeks blurred, police inquiries deflected with bribes and alibis, the mill raid pinned on Italian rivals, Bisnick's death a gang war footnote in top channel bulletins. Arben's leg healed crooked, a limp for rainy days, but the electronics shop reopened, stock restocked with legit Greek imports. Edda's tuition fund mysteriously swelled by an anonymous donor, Sokol's doing, winked. Liriana's salon thrived, her laughter returning like spring. Edda, scarred but unbroken, aced her exams, visa to Bologna in hand. "Law," she said at the airport, hugging Arben fierce. "To fix this broken place." He watched her bored, heart swelling, the family's light restored. In Tirana's underbelly, whispers lingered, the Hoxha who struck back, the reckoning that felled a serpent. But Arben walked taller, alliances tempered in blood, knowing peace was vigilant, vengeance a shadow long cast. Albania endured, scarred, resilient, its people weaving dreams from the dark. Epilogue, echoes of the eagle 2 years later. In the summer haze of 2015, Tirana hums with tentative renewal, the EU's distant promise flickering like neon in Skanderbeg Square, where tourists now sip espressos amid the ruins of bunkers turned cafes. Arben Hoxha limps slightly through the door of his expanded shop on Aruga e Durasit, the bell tinkling a victory chime over shelves brimming with gleaming gadgets, no shadows lurking in the corners. Edda thrives in Bologna, her letters filled with tales of lectures and lovers, the law her weapon against the world's fractures. Liriana's salon blooms with laughter, her hands steady as she clips away the past. Sokol and Benny fade into the bazaar's grit, ghosts who forged a family in fire, their debts settled in whispers. The Kukes serpent lies severed, its head a cautionary tale in smoky Carvihane, but Albania's underbelly stirs anew, vendettas eternal, resilience the true inheritance. For the Hoxhas, the eagle soars higher, wings scarred but unbroken, a testament that even in the dark, light reclaims its due.